What's going on, everybody? My name is John Paz. Welcome to episode 18 of Destination Talk.
And I am Harry, and we are coming to you from Chop Studios located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. Thank you to our show sponsor, the Academy in Garwood. To schedule a free class, text them at 908-540-6936. Today's guest is a force on the mat, no matter the style. Brandon Reed made his name in collegiate wrestling, dominating with raw strength, relentless pressure, and a champion's mindset. But his journey did not stop there. After hanging up his singlet, Brandon transitioned into the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, bringing the same intensity and work ethic to a whole new arena. In this episode, we talk about what it was like to compete at the college level, how wrestling shaped his discipline, and what it was like stepping into a completely different world in BJJ. Brandon will share the differences he sees between the two sports, not just in technique, but in culture, mindset, and community. We also get into his life on the road, traveling to teach seminars, training with top athletes, and continuing to evolve as both a competitor and as a coach. This conversation is about adaptability, growth, and the hunger to keep learning. Whether you're a grappler, a coach, or just someone who respects the grind, you are going to love this one. Brandon, welcome to Destination Talk. Thank you so much for your time. How are you doing today?
I'm amazing. I'm blessed.
That's good to hear. It's great to hear. And you was just saying off air before we went live, you're currently in Montreal?
Yeah, I've lived here. I'm going on 2 years of living here.
Sounds good. All right, so we'll jump right into the first question. What originally got you into wrestling, and then how did you end up transitioning over to jiu-jitsu?
So I wanted to play football when I was in the 8th grade, and I tried out for the football team, and then it didn't work out. And as I was leaving, like the last practice that I was just trying, the one of the football coaches was like, "Hey, you should try wrestling, just to lose a little bit of weight." And so I started wrestling, and then I guess my first official season was in the 9th grade. And yeah.
So to backtrack a little bit, where did you grow up? Where did you start wrestling and play football?
So I grew up in Kentucky. So Louisville, Kentucky. It's the biggest city in Kentucky. Most people don't know that there's an actual city there. Funny enough. But that season that I tried to do tryouts, that I actually didn't even get to play. I went to the tryouts, pretty much sat on the bench of the tryouts. The head coach, just kind of ignored me, and I was very frustrated. And so, like I said, I was pretty much told to just go away. And as I was going away, I kind of ran into the wrestling coach, who was also a football coach. But yeah, I didn't actually get to play football too much.
So you kind of got into wrestling a little more. So what would you describe your wrestling style, and how has it changed over the years as you got into jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I mean, I was a heavyweight, right? And I was a small heavyweight, so it's a bit different than how the smaller guys are going to wrestle. I like to have fun. I just want to hit cool stuff. I love duck unders. I love ankle picks. I love slide bys. You'd never see me hit a double leg ever. I was just always scared. I was always scared to break my neck on the fat boys. So I don't know. I guess slick, not the greatest, but I have a couple slick things, I would say.
Yeah, I see a bunch of your videos doing duck unders and ankle picks. I do the same kind of stuff, so I like watching your stuff as well. What were some of your biggest achievements in wrestling? Through college and growing up.
Uh, Man, I mean, pretty mediocre to be honest. Like I placed at Fargo a couple times, and then I only wrestled in the NAIA, but I won the NAIA 3 times. But I mean, we all know, like, if you're into college wrestling, it's nothing compared to like being like a Division 1. I always have to tell people it's not the same as being a D1 All American or D1 National Champ or anything. But yeah, I mean, I won the NAIA 3 times, and then in high school it was just placing at Fargo a couple times. But I had fun. I did it because I loved it, and that was pretty much it.
On the flip side, jiu-jitsu, what were some of those accomplishments you've had so far?
Yeah, I won Nogi Worlds a couple of times, and then I competed at ADCC Worlds. It's like it's probably the biggest, or at least the most prestigious event. So I guess those would be the things. Won Nogi Worlds a couple times, and then competed at ADCC. And I mean, I've competed everywhere in jiu-jitsu. I'm probably I like my jiu-jitsu career more than my wrestling career right now, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Are you more of a nogi guy or gi? Do you like both? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I started doing jiu-jitsu, I did primarily gi because I was in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. But then as I decided to move back to Louisville, the bigger city, I had the opportunity to start training nogi exclusively, and then as I started to compete more and more, I really just was like 100% nogi. I didn't mind the gi at all. I didn't even really know that nogi was that much of a thing because in my first gym it really wasn't. But then, like I said, as I started to compete and uh, I kind of heard what ADCC was. I was like, I want to try to do that because a lot of wrestlers have done well, or at least have made it to ADCC, and I was like, oh, I think I could do that too. So I just felt like I didn't want to do two sports at the time. Lots of people do both, but for me, I felt like I just wanted to focus on one, and I've been loving nogi.
Awesome.
So going back to your collegiate career, where did you go to school and where did you compete?
Yeah, I went to school at Lindsey Wilson College. I was the heavyweight.
And how did you choose that school?
Money was the big reason. I mean, I wasn't a big recruit. I mean, anyone who knows wrestling is like, I wasn't a big recruit. Like I said, I placed at Fargo a couple times, but it was like fourth and seventh. And so, to be honest, that's not like, I mean, most like pretty good Division 1 recruits, they all have like, I mean, they've all done really, really well usually for the most part. So I didn't really get recruited to many places. I got recruited to a couple D2 schools, and a couple NAI schools, and I come from like a single mother household, so I just kind of went with what was the cheapest, and
Right.
uh, the NAI offers like really, really good scholarships for guys that were in my position. And so I liked the coaches at Lindsey Wilson. They had like they had just a good attitude. That they believed in me, and um, they treated me well. They treated me like a man, even though I was a kid. And uh, that's pretty much the main reason I went to Lindsey.
Hmm. And, when did you start jujitsu?
Immediately after I finished wrestling college, so I did my last national tournament, and then like a week later, I started doing jiu-jitsu. My stepdad, he was a jiu-jitsu brown belt, so like I knew what jiu-jitsu was. I just never kind of really invested time into it because I was just so focused on wrestling. I mean, as you know, it's like you can't really do anything else when you're especially if you want to be decent.
Hmm.
You can't really do anything else besides wrestling, right? Wrestling, lifting weights, and so I was kind of around jiu-jitsu, but I never really did it. And then immediately after wrestling season was over, I was like, well, I'm not good enough to actually do anything on the international scene in wrestling. I knew that it was just a reality.
Hmm.
And so I was like, I'm going to just try something else.
How long after you started jiu-jitsu did you compete in your first competition? Because I know a lot of people, you know, talk about that, like, oh, maybe I should wait 2 years, or should I just jump right into a competition? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I competed almost immediately. I competed like 3 or 4 months after I started doing jujitsu. I would have competed earlier, but I had to kind of transition from the college town back to Louisville. But I competed really, really quickly, and I did like the expert division, which if you don't know, in jujitsu, like there's like beginner, intermediate, expert divisions, and I won a couple matches, but then I got heel hooked in like 30 seconds, maybe faster than 30 seconds in one of my matches by a guy that was like 160 pounds. And then yeah, immediately hooked after I got beat up.
So do you have a favorite moment from the jujitsu that stands out at this point?
Huh, favorite moment. I mean, I guess uh yeah, for me, I guess it was placing at ADCC trials. I mean, it's a really big tournament. I had tried 3 times, or I tried 2 times, and I didn't place, and then my third time I was able to place. And I mean, it's just a really hard tournament. It's one of the hardest tournaments in the world, and uh, yeah, it was cool. But I try not to be. I don't have too much of a like a real favorite moment because I'm so in on it still.
Right.
Hmm.
I have stuff from wrestling, but not as much in jiu-jitsu because I try to be a little bit present since I'm still competing.
So transitioning into your clinics and coaching, looking at your Instagram page, you have a lot of you're traveling all over, like we were talking about before. You're going to do clinics in Europe. I saw. So how do you like running clinics? What got you into that? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So immediately after college, I started teaching private lessons to high school kids in Kentucky. That was my full-time job. I taught like probably like 400 private lessons in about a year. So I was teaching multiple, basically a day every day. And I liked teaching, but then I realized I hated teaching kids. To be honest, I really don't like teaching kids.
Hmm.
And I really respect people who can teach kids. Um, but then I eventually stopped doing that because I started to have a little bit more success in jujitsu, and then I started doing private lessons with adults. And then as I started to kind of develop a name in jujitsu through competition and through social media, I started to get a lot of opportunities. And then after ADCC last year, it just kind of snowballed, and now I have almost too many seminars to count. But I'm like I said, I'm blessed, I'm grateful, and I'm just I wouldn't want to do anything else, you know.
Hmm.
How would you describe your coaching philosophy? Do you have a path that you follow when you're going into it?
Well, so I always tell I wouldn't consider myself a coach. I consider myself more of an instructor, and I find that they're two totally different things, right? Like a coach would be like, okay, we have our college wrestling coach. He's there. He's more than wrestling technique, right? For me in the jiu-jitsu world, it's a lot different, right? It's there's a big like capitalist market in jiu-jitsu, whereas in wrestling there tends to not be quite as much money. So it's more of an exchange of service, right? Like in jiu-jitsu, it's not like I'm gonna help you with your mental stuff. There is that, but it's not what I do. More or less, what I do is, hey, uh, I'm going to come out to your school for this rate, and I'm going to teach you what I essentially think maybe you need.
Right.
So I have practice structure, but I don't necessarily consider myself a coach.
Hmm. So, do you see a difference in how wrestlers and jujitsu instructors, coaches approach, learning new techniques and about that?
Yeah, 100%. Again, I don't know what your experience is, but like in my experience, there wasn't quite as much technique. Uh, there was a lot more drilling, right? Like there was a lot more call out drills, lots of speed drills. And then we did a lot of situational and stuff. This is my experience in college. I've heard different guys from different places say they've had totally different experiences. And of course, my college wrestling coach would break down technique. It just wasn't quite as frequent. And I think the nature of wrestling requires more like you're consistently moving, right? You're consistently
Hmm.
drilling, you're consistently doing situational rounds, et cetera, et cetera. But in jiu-jitsu, guys are older, they're nerds, they're like they really want you to sit down and break everything down even deeper than I've ever thought about with wrestling. Like my super duck is like one of my most popular moves. Like I don't even know how I learned that, right? And so like jiu-jitsu people, they like want to know like all like the little tiny things. And then so that's been kind of a challenge, is like there's a bit of overthinking in jiu-jitsu culture with technique, which with wrestling maybe there is, but again, maybe you have a different experience. But with wrestling, most of the time technique was like, hey, keep your head up, keep your hands locked, like stay above the knee. Like that was like wrestling for me.
Hmm.
Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's more like, oh, you have this specific grip and your head is exactly here. And so I think jiu-jitsu people are a lot more intricate and like their want to learn, and I think sometimes to a fault. I
Hmm.
found, so I try to bring in like the wrestling culture of like, I mean, I'm still teaching technique, I'm still trying to help people get really good value, but I want to simplify it. And so it's been a fun process trying to kind of combine both. And I don't know if you guys have ever done any jujitsu, but jiu-jitsu guys overthink a lot, so I'm trying to find ways to really simplify wrestling so
Hmm.
that they can learn.
Yeah, I did jujitsu. I started when I was 6, 7 years old. So you and I have like a
Wow.
really similar background. I got my blue belt at the moment, um, but I'm kind of getting back into it. Now that my college wrestling career is over. So
Mhm.
I trained with Vitor Shallon over
Mhm.
here in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. But eventually I want to kind of teach a little bit of my wrestling in the jiu-jitsu world, because I feel like the takedowns really lack in the jiu-jitsu
Mhm.
world. Everyone wants to pull guard, and aren't they getting away from that mostly in some rule sets? Is that true?
Yeah, like ADCC rule sets, it really I mean, ADCC is probably the best rule set if you're a
Hmm.
wrestler, right? It's still going to be super freaking hard, no matter how good of a wrestler you are. But
Hmm.
at least the rules, I mean, there's negatives for pulling guard in ADCC. Over time, you have to start standing. You can't pull. So I think ADCC really works out well for wrestlers, especially at the start. But then obviously, like as you get better at jujitsu, like there's going to be lots of times in the higher level matches where you're just not going to wrestle.
Hmm.
Just some guys are going to be like, oh, this guy's a freaking D1 All American. I'm not gonna wrestle this guy. So ADCC for sure. But besides that, lots of the rule sets really favor guard players.
Yeah, I used to be in IBJJF all the time, so everyone would always kind of just sit down, or I'd have to get to a
Yeah,
takedown quickly. But
yeah.
so how do you see wrestling and jiu-jitsu? How do they complement each other? What are like the main similarities between the two?
Mm, I guess if we're talking about like we'll talk about kind of like competition jujitsu and wrestling, because like hobbyist jujitsu feels like such a different world.
Hmm.
But competition, I mean, I think, I mean, it's just like anything. Like you have to be disciplined. You have to be, willing to fail. You have to compete a lot. I think those are things that I learned in wrestling. I think this thing all of us who have wrestled in college learned is like you just kind of have to keep competing. You have to compete a lot. You have to try to face the best people. But as far as like a technical aspect of it, most takedowns and I mean pretty much all the takedowns from wrestling work in jiu-jitsu. There's obviously a little bit of nuance with, I mean, as you know, like with submissions, but I think sometimes the nuance is a little bit overblown. Most people suck like so bad that you can pretty much do any takedown. Uh, I mean, it's. I always hear the thing, and I'm sure you hear it too. It's like everyone's like, I would just guillotine wrestlers, and I'm like, man, it's really freaking hard to guillotine a really good wrestler when they blast through your chest, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I think sometimes the differences, especially with takedowns, can get blown out of proportion, and I think it can kind of lead to paralysis by analysis a lot. It's actually a issue I see with students when I'm teaching. One of the number one questions I get is, how do you get confident in doing takedowns without getting guillotined or without getting kimura? And my answer is always just get better at the takedown. Um, so yeah, I mean that's a little bit of a rant.
No, not a problem. Having competed in both sports, um, do you think more wrestlers and vice versa, jujitsu competitors should try the other sport or be a part of it to kind of understand the technical side of both?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good opportunity. I don't see as much value for jujitsu guys to compete in wrestling. But I think, yeah, I guess it depends on what your goals are, right? Like, maybe if you want to do, if you're a wrestler and you want to do MMA, or if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, maybe you want to do MMA. But like, I think there could be value in both. I just know that there's like also a point of diminishing returns on both sides. Like if you're a guy who's a wrestling purist, maybe you don't need to really do jiu-jitsu. And if you're a guy who's a jiu-jitsu purist, you can learn some takedowns for sure. Um, but maybe it's not always necessary. I know it's a weird answer, but I've actually been asked this question a lot, and I've thought about it a lot. And I'm like, I think there's value in maybe seeing both, but I don't necessarily think it's a necessity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was always like a firm believer in that. Like if you wrestled, it'll help your jujitsu,
Mm,
and maybe not the other way around, but
yeah, that's what I was gonna
actually
say.
maybe yeah, because jujitsu control how jujitsu helps you control people. It could help with wrestling. So I
Mm.
think um another next question for you: do you think wrestlers should try jujitsu, or do you think jujitsu should try wrestling, and why? I'll ask you that question.
Yeah, again, like if they want to compete, yeah. Like if I mean, again, like if you're a wrestler, you graduate and you have nothing else to do, like you don't expect to go to the U.S. Open and be like a world team member. Then maybe yeah, you should do jiu-jitsu. A really famous jiu-jitsu guy just did the U.S. Open for Masters. His name is Rafael Lovato. It was cool. It was his first ever jiu-jitsu tournament. He's a two-time ADCC silver medalist. So uh, he kicked butt. Yeah, it's like if you want to compete, if you have like the urge to compete and you want to try something different, then yeah, there's definitely value.
Hmm.
One of the topics that come up when we're talking to people who've listened to the show and kind of going back to your days a little bit, what advice would you give to those out there who are about to go into college or in high school, and the recruiting process and how they should conduct themselves and going about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously like the reality of it is money. That's number one. Is there's like crippling debt in the US, especially when it comes to going to school. I have lots of friends who wrestled Division 1. I could have wrestled Division 1. Not no, I don't know if I would have been successful or not, but I could have wrestled, and
Right.
but I just didn't have the offers, like the type of offers that were appropriate to do so, that I could justify. So I think kind of sitting down with your parents and like looking at the numbers and being like, how much money would I owe in 4 years if I kept the same scholarship, right? Like
Right.
assume you just don't progress, like you don't end up being a starter, you don't end up being an all-American. Would I be okay with the amount of debt that's going to come out of 4 years of if I just plateau? Because it often happens a lot. Like we've all seen it. There's lots of wrestlers who just don't get better in college for whatever reason. And it's like there's not much value, in my opinion, just being a wrestler at any level if you end up being $100,000 in debt, which a lot of people do. So I think finding a place that can suit your financial needs, and then always realizing that like you can start at a lower level, maybe win a national title at a lower level, and then transfer to like a bigger school, and now you'll have the opportunity to have a little bit more money. I think that's the biggest thing, and then obviously culture, and then I guess for lots of people, what you want to do academically. For me, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really care about school. It was not a big deal. I knew for a fact that I was not going to have a normal job after college,
Right.
so I didn't really care. But for people who do care, I guess you could say your major, finding a good culture, finding what fits you, and but honestly, for again, my biggest thing is money, and being honest with yourself and say, hey, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't see myself uh, getting a full ride at a D1 school, or maybe you know, maybe I need to stay closer to home. I think there's like a lot of things to consider, and it takes a lot of like humility and maturity to, I think, come to that decision.
I think you touch on something very important in what you said, and that's, being able to recognize where you're at a given moment. And with NIL deals and a lot of coaches looking for players who have experience, someone they're more inclined to go get that kid who's been in college for 1 or 2 years because they've been there and they know they can do it, as opposed to that incoming freshman that's still an unknown.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It kind of sucks. NIL kind of sucks, but I mean, it's good. It's good. I think it's great. Guys get to make money. And then there's like the new ruling that like JUCO and NAI eligibility doesn't count. So you can always go to JUCO for 2 years or go to NAI for 2 years, and it doesn't count against your eligibility. So you could always just jump D1 and still have 4 years of eligibility left,
Right.
which is really nice.
Hmm. So another question we always ask on the show is, what if you had to go back and tell your younger self some advice? What advice would that be?
Hmm. Maybe, huh? That's a good question. I wouldn't tell myself anything. I'd be like, "You're killing it, bro. Just keep doing you." Like
Hmm.
I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like I'm everything that happened to me happened, and all the mistakes I made were supposed to be made, and that's why I'm Brandon, who I am now.
Hmm.
You
That's
learn
awesome.
from them.
Yeah.
And then and another question that we typically ask is, just in general, what general advice would you offer to those competing out there, maybe doing similar things to what you're doing? What can you share with them?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you want to do something like what I'm doing, I think the obvious answer is like you gotta freaking compete and you gotta try to get good, and you have to be willing to get your legs snapped a couple times, and uh, especially in jiu-jitsu, like coming from wrestling, I was used to winning a lot, especially in my division. And so it was really humbling just losing a lot, and losing fast. Like I've lost a lot of matches in like 20 seconds, because that's the
Right.
nature of jiu-jitsu. Is someone gets something, you're but I think it's like being okay with that and just being humble and like surrendering the outcome and just competing as much as possible, because I genuinely don't think that anything helps you with your competition more than competing, and then finding a room that fits your goals, right? Being like, I'm going to be in a room that is going to at least maybe potentially be able to push me in the direction that I want. And then lastly is like social media. Like as great as my accomplishments may be to some people, it's nothing in comparison to lots of people. But I probably make a lot more money than lots of people who have much better accomplishments than me in wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And a big reason is because I leverage what I have with social media. And I think it sounds crappy because it's like, I don't want to tell people, hey, you have to focus on social media, because at the end of the day, you want to be good at your sport. But the reality is like, if you don't want to, go work a job, social media is gonna have to be your job. So be a good athlete, and also, put a lot of time in with social media, and then find a place that has the same aims as you.
How important has that social media aspect been for you?
Very, very good. Like I said, like I get most of my seminars just through social. I get all of them through social media, right? Like again, it did require, like, I had a big boost after ADCC. I had a crap ton. I think I've had 34 seminars this year, like since ADCC, which was in August. So less than a year. I've had like 34, 35. And a big part of it was like, oh, people knew me already because of social media. And then going to ADCC validated those
Right.
people. And so, but that's also why I say I don't want to just be one of these like wrestling influencers who's just a wrestling influencer and who doesn't compete, because I can find that a little fake. Um, but again, that's a little controversial of a take. I think you have to do both. I think you have to be, I don't maybe you don't have to win, but I think you have to be out there competing, putting yourself out there on top of giving value consistently on social media for free.
Hmm.
Well, Brandon, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today on the episode. We really do appreciate the insights you gave us, and you know, we want to wish you the best of luck. And especially, actually, you had mentioned, we can touch on this real quick. You're heading out to Europe pretty soon, so you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that real quick?
Yeah. So me and my girlfriend wanted to go to Europe, and I now have like the ability to just basically be like, hey, I'm gonna be here for this time span. I was like, I'm gonna be in Portugal for this long, and then I put that out in the world, and then a bunch of people message me, and then I end up scheduling a bunch of seminars. So I have seminars in like Portugal, the UK, Germany, Belgium, and France. So I'll be going around like that part of Europe. Uh, it's great. Like I said, it's like the opportunities in the jiu-jitsu world that I never would have had in the wrestling world. And I'm super grateful. And again, those good things come with patience and, posting a lot and competing a lot, and then just building relationships and building, I guess, a portfolio. I mean, I do so many dang seminars that people, I guess, they're just like, well, might as well have them out too. So I'm lucky.
No, that sounds great. Well, safe travels and best of luck as you're doing that, and continued success. And that's a wrap on episode 18 of Destination Talk with Paz and Harry. Until we see you again.